Wrap us up, big guy.
So as I love doing, say I'm going to do a thing, don't do the thing, and then spend 3 weeks spinning my wheels trying to figure out what to do. Especially when I still don't have a console to use. So I'm trying to work on stuff that I can use my PC for, but I don't want to do some infinite ending thing for the show. Especially, I don't love games like that anyways. But I really don't want to try to review something like that. But those are the things that PCs have a lot more of. A lot of the games that I like to play maybe on PC, but they are really poorly optimized. My first backup option when I was not able to play Borderlands 2 or continue playing enough of Borderlands 2 to have an opinion, I'm like 15 hours in maybe. I was gonna play Stray. I bought it and I started it, and it is optimized so fucking poorly. My PC cannot handle it. I have a laptop. It is not it's not super old. It's well maintained. I have very few. I have good.
That's like a 5-hour game, and it was highly praised for its visuals. So yeah, I would not try to run that on a potato.
I know, but like still, my computer's internally clean. I don't have a lot of stuff going on. I don't keep files on it. It's neat and tidy. I have 2 games installed, so there's none of that's a problem. I started it up and went, holy fuck, this can't maintain its frame rate. I dropped every setting down to low and worked my way up, and I got somewhere around medium to kind of function, and it was still driving me so crazy. Like I dropped it back down, and then it lost so much of its luster. I was like, well, why even bother? This game is an experience more than anything else.
Right. If
it's not going to look good and it plays fine on a keyboard, which is weird, it didn't work out. So that was disappointing. So I spent $30 and wasted like 2 hours fucking around. I wanted to play Arctic Awakening, which is a very recently released first person kind of survival game. It's a story-based thing. It's made in Unity, which I'm a big sucker for because I've used Unity to fuck around with stuff, and there's something about Unity games that appeals to me. The way that most developers make their visuals in Unity is really appealing. I cannot explain it. AKA, this game looks like The Long Dark, but it's actually a story instead of a sandbox. I'm still gonna play it, but it's only available. Correction, it's available on everything. However, Xbox crossplay is not enabled. Or not crossplay. Play anywhere. So because I'm special and I've had my Xbox account for so long, I'm really invested in achievements. We know this. And if something's available on an Xbox, I want to play it on my Xbox account so I have the record. So I pussied out of buying it for PC, even though I almost certainly could have run it because I just didn't want to deal with that because I'm stupid. I'm probably going to play that next month. I tried a few other things. I don't even remember what they were at this point. I found something really interesting that I don't remember hearing anything about, but it really should have hit my radar. I played Road 96. It is an adventure game in first person. It's made by French people. Gross. It's procedurally generated in a sense. Let me explain. The setting is, what do they call it? Petria. It's basically just like rural America, but you're in an authoritarian country. You play as a teenager, or multiple teenagers, actually, who are trying to cross the U.S.-Mexico border, basically. Not Mexico, the U.S.-Canadian border, to get the fuck out of Dodge, because this place is shit. This game is all politics. I'm sorry. I'm actually not. So you're in a very authoritarian...
I did a beans.
I know. You're in an authoritarian state run by the president, who is also the CEO of a massive oil corporation. It's very subtle. Who's about? There's an upcoming election. That is the main linchpin of the game. It's what everybody's talking about in all playthroughs. It's the focal point that the game ends on. This is a common trend: is teenagers trying to get out because they realize shit's getting bad. So there's like established organizations under this government to specifically target like teenagers hitchhiking and trying to cross borders and shit. It kind of looks like dog shit, to be honest. It has a really weird art style that sometimes works really well, and sometimes, most of the times, it looks really boring. It's very heavy polygons. It's very simple shapes and colors, very minimal lighting effects. It's sometimes it works. The human characters look horrible. But sometimes it's got a certain type of charm. It looks French. I don't know how else I can explain it. It looks French. So visually speaking, it's not that engaging. But because it's set kind of in an ambiguous time period, it has Life is Strange energy. Is the big not necessarily visual, but kind of aesthetic otherwise part of the game. The texture of the game is teenagers, indie punk pop music and like folk music and running away, and it's scratching an itch. It's tickling my brain. That's why I decided to play it. So you all of your characters are unnamed, as far as I know. You will play as 5 or 6 different teenagers. You were given very little backstory about what their home life was like, why they're leaving the country, whatever. The game starts you off in a car. It was a really weird opening. You're in a car, and it doesn't tell you anything, really. There's no intro cinematic. It's just some interactable items. There's cassette tapes in the glove compartment, which are collectibles from the game. There's like 15, I think. You can play them in other cars. You just carry them around in your inventory. You can play them in other cars, in random radios you'll find scattered throughout the world. So it adds that very... yeah, the Life is Strange vibe. I'm gonna go have I'm gonna sit by a pond and look at the pretty cinematics while the like commissioned soundtrack made by someone with 5,000 listeners on Spotify plays. It's got that energy to it. Once you run out of options, the game will then tell you to fucking drive fast. Just there's no other options. You have to floor it. You get pulled over, and this is how it's revealed to us that you're a teenager running away, blah, blah, blah. You're in a stolen car. And then the cop that's pulling you over is one of your primary NPCs. There are, I believe, 8 recurring NPCs that will pop up in all of these stories because they take place over a certain area or a large chunk of Road 96. It's Route 66. You get it. The cop gets
Road 69?
Or what about Road 67?
I knew you would. Thankfully, I've missed out on that joke.
You set me up. They get shot at by other characters who you'll later find out are other vital NPCs. The kid's able to get away, whatever. You then walk. It's not a walking simulator, so you'll be happy. It's very brief sections, and you'll get like a prompt when you hit like the end of a certain area. Continue walking, or try hitchhiking, or whatever. Along your way, all of these things occur in different sections. I'll get to how they connect. The first one that I encountered was a political rally for the incumbent president, dickhead. There's a group of counter-protesters. Because you have no money and you're running away, you end up being the camera operator for this rally. And kind of the whole game is a series of mini games. There's the camera to get a good score, to get paid well. You have to hit certain angles. You have to encourage the crowd to act a certain way, stuff like that. And that kind of mechanic applies to a lot of different parts. Basically, each one of these teenagers' stories plays out as a series of vignettes. Following the scuffle at this political rally, you end up in a trailer park, you meet another teenager, you bond over a fire, you get kicked out by the campsite manager for being obnoxious teenagers, and so on and so forth. The primary mechanic, I would say, is trying to stay alive. You are trying to get to a destination. There is a literal roadmap. Your loading screens between vignettes are showing you your progress towards your goal. You'll hit a certain amount of stops before you would hypothetically reach the border. So your goal is to get all of these kids across the border. Meeting strangers, finding out their relations with other people. There are, again, recurring NPCs, and there are just some one-off characters. They all have weird, bizarre connections between each other, and the more interesting part, I think, happens once you inevitably fail. I think it's extremely unlikely you will get your first kid across the border without dying or being arrested. So when that happens, I went, oh shit, is that it? Like, that was like an hour. What the fuck? And then you have this news broadcast that's like, oh, here's all these other missing kids that are going on because this is such a big epidemic and we're trying to find them because they're missing, even though everybody knows they're just running away. And you then are told to select one of these other kids who's such and such age, such and such distance from the border, and you start it all over again. The base, I think the opening cinematic or the opening vignette of each one of these is set in stone, as well as like your geographical location to start out with. But the rest of this game is procedurally generated. So you have however many, like 30 or 40 different types of stops you could make. You have like the political rally, there's gas stations, hotels, campsites, whatever. And the game just fucking roulettes you into a different one. Then I would assume that the recurring NPCs would then also be procedurally generated as to track their movements throughout this world. So if it's like, oh, you're going to be at this hotel at such and such mile marker, well, at this time, this NPC, like the cop who's out looking, turns out for her own missing kid, who you've encountered earlier in the game, would hypothetically be at this location. So now you have a little quest where this cop says, hey, I know you're a runaway teen. However, I'm not going to snitch on you if you do me a favor. And she'll give you like what's the term for it? I used to know this. It's like a hypothetical list of witnesses and their like sketches or mugshots. And she's like, okay, so somebody in this terrorist organization, big quotes, is supposedly running their operation out of this hotel. I need you to go talk to all the other tenants and see what's going on. If they recognize any of ththese people, get characteristics, and you mark shit off. So there's a lot of one-off mini game short sections. It's really weird to describe. I don't know how to put it. And then in all of these vignettes, you have a lot of options, not necessarily in how the story itself changes in front of your face, but you have options to, so, based on how much money you have in your pocket, you can try to walk, which is free, but might get you caught by the cops. You can try to hitchhike, which is dangerous. You could either die or you could also be snitched out to the cops. But again, you might get a chance to sleep, which is really important because you need to sleep. If you don't have money, you might be able to steal food or water from somewhere. Or if you have money, you could just buy it. There are some businesses that won't do business with teenagers because they think you're suspicious. You can vandalize political advertisements for both candidates. You can destroy property. You can break into places. You can then steal from those places based on whatever's going on in that vignette section. And also your dialogue options have some level of relevance to how those interactions end up. So say with the cop in the hotel. So you go through, you do this favor. Turns out none of the people on this sheet match that description. She gets mad at you, whatever. She still gives you some money and sends you on your way. During that interaction, a real suspicious like semi truck pulls up into the motel. The clerk talks to this person and that truck leaves. The cop doesn't see this. And you have the option to tell her to get into her good graces. This is suspicious behavior. That's probably something to do with this terrorist organization. Or you can keep it to yourself because you're not a snitch. Those sorts of things will have very drastic effects on the story. Maybe not in this current kids story, but maybe on your next one, based on how the ongoing world continues to form. It's really interesting on like a technical level because it's not like it doesn't feel like a branching narrative in a sense. It isn't like there's really big forks in the road. It's kind of like everything's a fork. So instead of it turning into like a railroad network, it's like fungus in the ground. It's so interconnected, you can barely tell there are separate strands at all. It's very strange. I don't know how much I actually like it and how much I'm just kind of impressed by what it's doing. There are, like I said, a total of like 8 recurring NPCs. I think that most of them are relatively well fleshed out. It will give you a percentage marker on how much of either their dialogue options you've exhausted or how much information you've obtained about the character for you, the player. So in your first encounter with the cop, you'll get like 12%. And then in your second playthrough, you'll get another 30 or whatever. And that all adds up. So by the time the game is over, you should have a really good understanding of all of these other characters. And you should also start being successful in getting your kids across the border. I think I got all of them after my second. It's really weird. So much of this is really hard to pull apart what is gameplay and what is narrative, which I think is a good thing. It just means it's hard to talk about. The sound design is really boring. It's very basic. A lot of it's stock sound effects or slightly modified stock stuff. The voice acting is fine. I think there's a couple of actors I vaguely recognize from probably another game, but it's all fine. The performances are okay. None of these kids are really characters, so there isn't much really to say there as your character. They're kind of all just empty vessels to do with. The world is really interesting, and I think that this world works really well for this type of game and narrative. I'm really curious about a bunch of other things. I'm having George R.R. Martin brain where I'm like, but what was Aragorn's tax policy? I have those sorts of questions after encountering some characters or hearing about events going on in the world that the game has nothing to do with. So I think the world building was done particularly well. It is incredibly heavy-handed. There is nothing subtle about this in the slightest. It makes Life is Strange look subtle and deep by comparison. and that those games are not that clever. Even on their better days, they're still pretty straightforward. So it's really up to personal taste on what's going to be interesting or not. On that level, I liked it, but I definitely see that it's not everybody's cup of tea. I played through twice, so I completed all of the vignettes with all of those kids, and then I looped it around again. One playthrough took me 8 hours, I believe, in that neck of the woods, and once I found out that it was procedurally generated when I did some research, I was like, oh shit, I want to see how different this could be. It's quite different. I was very impressed. I did not expect it to be so procedurally generated. It felt like playing fucking Spelunky. Just like, oh shit, this is so different. There's nothing in common with what this was like before, and I think that that's pretty cool. Apparently there is it's either a DLC or a standalone DLC prequel. I have not played that. I'm going to look into that out of curiosity. I paid $5 for this. It was worth it for the time invested, and because these sorts of things appeal to me. It's certainly not the most well-rounded game of this type. There's a lot of other story-based, choose-your-own-adventure things that are a lot more coherent and cohesive between their elements, whether it be their aesthetic choices, the music, dialogue, when it comes to Life is Strange, how the powers are used. Like, a lot of that stuff is done a lot better. That's one of the things with Life is Strange, why it keeps being the bar, is because everything works really well in unison. This doesn't have that, really. And the art style really does drag it down for most of it. It's just not engaging to look at. It does look like it was whipped up by 10 people in college. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's admirable. But it does mean it's not very interesting to look at. That's just kind of how it goes. Shout out, there's a car sequence where you're in a chase. That was pretty cool. A cop the cop commandeers you, and you get into a high-speed pursuit, and there's a little mini game where you have to move between the different lanes on the highway to avoid cars. That was really silly, but it was quite fun. Yeah, I don't know. It's available, I believe, on pretty much everything. It doesn't seem very technically meaty. It does not need a lot of processing power. So it's worth it if you're into that sort of thing. If the story sounds interesting, or the gameplay, like the story mechanics sound interesting. Otherwise, it's probably not worth your time. But it's at a pretty low price point, and I think it might be available on like Game Pass or one of the dang subscription services for all the consoles and whatever. So methinks high C tier, not stupendous, but worth the time, I suppose.